Welcome, everyone, to another episode of All Things End Times. And starting tonight and for the next couple weeks, we're going to be talking about Noah's Ark. We're going to be talking about the fact that it's real, the account is real, what it has to do with the end times, of course, and proof that it actually occurred. And with us is Pastor George. Brother George, say hello to everyone.
Hello.
And let's get started here. First thing we're going to talk about is Noah's Ark, the proof that it happened, and also why it occurred, why it happened. And for this, we're going to have to go back a little bit before the account of Noah, back in Genesis chapter 5, and we're going to look at verses 28 through 32. Lamech lived 180 years and had a son, and he called his name Noah, saying, "This one will comfort us concerning our work and the toil of our hands, because of the ground which the Lord has cursed." After he begat Noah, Lamech lived 595 years and had sons and daughters. So all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, there's a couple things to note here. First of all, we have the account of who and where Noah came from. His father was a man named Lamech. The second thing is, notice Noah's name. Noah's name in Hebrew is actually the word comfort. And why is it comfort? Why is it comfort? When the ground became cursed, back in Genesis chapter 3, God said man was going to toil. That means absolutely do physical back-breaking work to make the ground produce because of the curse of sin. It didn't just only affect Adam and Eve. It affected everything on earth. Animal life, plant life, you name it. It affected everything. It was like a massive chain reaction. When Eve first and then Adam fell to sin, it affected everything, all aspects of life. All right. Now, we have the account of Noah's birth. We have the account of who his father was. How else can we know that Noah was not a fictional character, but an actual man in history and a biblical fact as well? In Hebrews chapter 11, in verse 7, it confirms Noah's existence. He was counted among the patriarchs as the faithful of God. Next thing you have is Matthew 24, 37 through 39. And let's go there real quick. Matthew chapter 24. Matthew 24 and verses 37 through 39. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. All right. Now, next week we will be coming back. Actually, the week after next, we will be coming back to those verses again. But for tonight, I wanted to point out again, centuries and centuries and centuries later, in the New Testament, the Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus himself, acknowledges Noah and acknowledges the flood account because he gives events that led up to the point of time where he entered into the ark. All right, now let's go back to Genesis, and we're going to take a look in chapter 6. Genesis 6, and I'm going to read to you verses 1 through 12, and then we're going to discuss it. Now it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Then the Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. So the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. This is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. All right. So we took a brief look that Noah was, in fact, a real individual. Noah was not a fictional character. Noah was a real individual. It's recognized not only elsewhere in the Tanakh or Old Testament, but it is also acknowledged in the New Testament, even by the Lord himself. All right, now, I want us to take a careful look at why the flood occurred. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, you go into different commentaries on Genesis, whether Christian or Jewish commentaries, the reasons for the flooding differ than what we're going to talk about tonight. The reasons differ. What we will be covering in the next couple weeks also differ in the commentaries. And you'll see in just a minute what I am talking about. Now, in verses 1 and 2, as pointed out before, we believe the rebellion in heaven That was Lucifer's fall when he led a myriad of angels in a failed attempted coup against God in heaven. We believe, as we talked about before, that time was a little bit before the dawn of creation when it happened. Why? One, Genesis chapter 3. And of course, Revelation chapter 12, which confirms who the serpent was in Genesis chapter 3. Right at the dawn of creation, Satan was already there. Again, also, Brother George covered this. In Job chapter 1, where was Satan found when God was doing an account in heaven? He was found roaming back and forth on the face of the earth. So that's one reason why we believe that the war in heaven occurred shortly before the dawn of creation. The next reason is here in verse 1 or in verse 2, that the sons of God, in Hebrew, that is B'nai Elohim, and that term is used referring to the angelic beings of heaven. They are referred to as the sons of God. And again, this is just shortly after the creation account. Couple generations, couple centuries, but it's still close to Genesis chapter 3. Not close, separated by a handful of generations and centuries, but it's still a close point. And here we have fallen angels. How do we know they're fallen? Because they're on earth. And they are doing something that absolutely goes against the creation of God. And we'll get into that in just a second. All right. Get my notes here. So what was the sin that would cause God's wrath to be at such a level where he would destroy his creation? Not only that he would destroy, but even caused regret in that which he created, specifically mankind. What exactly was the sin? All right. Now, in verses 5 and 6, then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. The majority of commentaries, at least the ones that I've read, that I've researched, the majority of those commentaries differ, but kind of come to the same conclusion. Man was evil. He fell. And God destroyed the earth. Man fell generations back. He fell generations back, right with the first two human beings that he created. I've seen commentaries that said, well, it is because good people were consorting with evil people. Well, that does not work either, and that certainly does not fit the context of what is described here. First of all, if God was going to destroy mankind and all life upon it for good people consorting with evil people, well, guess what? The world would have been destroyed over thousands and thousands of times from creation. Because even to this date, you have good people that consort with evil people. I think it's very evident in our time right now. So that doesn't work. That does not work in the exegesis of these texts. It doesn't. So what was the sin besides wickedness of man? Yes, again, the wickedness of man is listed, but there's something else that is listed. And let's take a look at it. Take a look, starting in verse 2. That the B'nai Elohim, sons of God, saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. What was a large part of the sin that would cause God's wrath to be at the point where he would destroy all life on this earth? And not only destroy it, but even regret it. Even regret it. Regret ever even making it. What was that sin? Human women having relations with angelic beings. The angelic beings that fell. Why were they on earth? Because they fell. They fell from what? The war in heaven, Revelation 12. They fell and they were on earth. Now, there are many that say, well, how can spirit beings physically, carnally know human women? They're spirit beings. They're not solid. They're not flesh. So how can that be? They have the ability to become flesh. And where do we see evidence of that? Later on in Genesis, right after God circumcised Abraham, and he was in his tent in the heat of the day. And what happened? The Lord and two angels accompanying came to him. What did Abraham do? Abraham prepared a meal. He prepared a meal. And according to the account, they ate. Now, how can a spirit being that's not solid, is not solid matter, is not flesh, consume food unless they have the ability to become solid matter, to become flesh? What took place here absolutely goes against every bit of nature. It goes against every bit of what God intended. Angels are angels, humans are humans. But now, according to these verses, an evil hybrid offspring was the result. And again, it's not figurative speech, it's not symbolic speech. It makes it very clear that the sons of God had carnal knowledge, knew human women carnally, and the result was children were born unto them. Children were born unto them. An unnatural hybrid race of human and giant, the word there being Nephilim. And that absolutely went against every part of what God intended in creation. Now, did it just happen and God didn't know about it? God knew about it before he even created the earth. Again, God's existence is eternal, with no point of beginning and no point of conclusion. The Lord is forever. And there's several scriptures to back that up. Several. Isaiah 44:6, Revelation chapter 1, verse 8, just to name a few. So God knew about it. God already knew about it before it ever even happened, because God is omniscient. God is omnipresent in all points of time and omniscient, aware of all that is happening in all points of time. So God knew this would happen. God knew this would happen. You have now a race that does not belong in our physical world, and they have to be destroyed. Man's wickedness, yes, it is bad. It is bad at that point in time. And we're going to get more into that as we get into this study. But for now, it is an absolute, literal account that there was a race, a hybrid race, again, of angelic being and human female. Or it was the result of angelic being and human female that caused this race of Nephilim, of giants. God could not allow it to continue or to exist. And we see the result of what would cause God's wrath to be as such that he'd destroy the entire world over with a flood. He would destroy it. He regretted making it because, yes, man was wicked, but something much wickeder took place, and God could not have it. It was not part of God's plan for the world. Again, God already knew it would happen. It does fit prophetically, which we will be getting into later on, but it goes against God's purpose in creation. Now, we're going to finish up with this. It says Noah found grace in the eyes of God, and that that Noah was even perfect in his generation. Perfect in his generation. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean he was sinless? Well, the wording is clear. Noah was perfect in his generations. Does it mean he was sinless? And the answer to that is no. Go with me real quick to Romans chapter 3. Romans chapter 3, and take a look at verse 23. For all have sinned and fell short of the glory of God. All. That is an essential Christological doctrine and theology, especially when we're talking about salvation. There are no sinless humans. There have been no sinless humans since Genesis chapter 3. That is a fact. That is why salvation is necessary for every human, but that is another sermon, which we will do as well, or we will include. So Paul makes it clear there's no sinless humans. So why does it say perfect? Well, first of all, the Hebrew word used here is tamim. Tamim. Tamim does not mean sinless. It does not mean sinless. What it means is whole and complete. And the context is Noah and his generations were without corruption. What do I mean by that? What is the text talking about? Noah and his generations were 100% human. There was no Nephilim involved in his generations. There were no women in his generations that were taken by angelic beings and impregnated. Noah was 100% human. He was all human. Now, it would include that Noah was faithful to God. Again, in the book of Hebrews, he's counted as part of the faithful patriarchs. So he was faithful to God. He was obedient to God. But he was not sinless, but he was 100% human. There was no corruption in his DNA or his family line's DNA. And that is what it is talking about. Noah was preserved along with his surviving family. They were preserved to carry on after the flood. Brother George, anything you want to add to this?
No.
All right. Well, now let us take a look at the ark, this massive ship that would house two of every species on earth. Let us take a look at how that is a fact. And Brother George, you're up.
Well, tell me if this sounds familiar. God gets mad at people. God speaks to a man, tells him he's going to destroy people. Man builds a boat, puts two of everything on a boat, floods the earth. Sounds like what we just read. So there is a flood story that is told in every major religious society. This particular one that I'm quoting comes out of the Tales of Gilgamesh. It goes all the way back to ancient Mesopotamia. Now, if you take your smartphone and ask Google if anything's ever been disproven, it will point out that nothing has been verifiably disproven from the Bible. There is some areas, such as the flood, where scientists disagree on certain areas. Where they disagree? Well, they disagree, could it even happen to begin with? So, just a snapshot at what we know scientifically. We know that deep within the earth, and forgive me, I'm reading my notes, it is between the upper and the lower mantle. There are water reservoirs that it is believed by scientists to house more water than what is known to be in the oceans today. This would be between the upper and the lower mantle. This is actually somewhere around 400 miles below our feet. So, when the Bible talks about the flood waters, is it possible to flood the earth? Yes. If that opens up, it's higher than Mount Everest. We also have to look too at, is there a distinction between all of these other, the Tales of Gilgamesh, the Quran, the Bible, and there's actually a lot of distinctions. Eric just really went through one of them. The Tale of Gilgamesh, also the Quran, it's more of a broad-based picture. It's humanity was getting evil. Yes, it was getting evil, but there was more to it. Also, in these tales, it is believed one of two places. In the Islamic world, it's believed one place, but in the Christian world, a lot of scholars have come to settle on Mount Ararat. Now, Mount Ararat is in Turkey. It is close to the border with Iran. And if you ever look at this, a lot of people in the South like to use the term out in the middle of nowhere. Mount Ararat would be out in the middle of nowhere. It is a place that you're not just going to coincidentally come upon. You've got to intentionally get lost to look for it. Forgive me, looking through my notes. It was the first known scientific expedition was in 1829 by a Russo-German professor, Frederick Patriot. In 1876, James Bryce, while doing a excavation, discovered worked wood. Worked wood just pretty much means wood that has, over time, the elements, it is been distorted. Now, there is a site just 18 miles south, or let me go back here. On Mount Ararat, 18 miles south of the peak, is a site called the Dunbar site. So the peak here, and then 18 miles south, the Dunbar site is where the site is believed to be. All right, so let's fast forward to 1916. It's a Russian reconnaissance flight above Mount Ararat. Lieutenant Rovanovsky alleged of a giant vessel that resembled an ark. Report got sent back to Tsar Nicholas II. He sent an expedition of 150 soldiers to the area. So in history, in archaeology, and let me use a prime example of this. There was recently a filming by National Geographic, done with a very well-known actor, and they was in the Amazon. Well, there was tales of a monster snake from the tribal people for ages, and they wound up discovering a whole new species of anaconda. It's actually, I believe it's the green-headed anaconda, but it's the largest snake now known in the world. So when people go in and do expeditions, when they start digging, when they start to try and sort this out, they will talk to locals. They will talk to people that are deeply rooted within that society, and they will start to find out little things. One of the things that came out of this was what is called the Village of Eight. The Village of Eight is believed to have been the village where Noah and his family would have settled right after the flood. There are these massive stones. Some scientists say they are natural geological formations. Other scientists say that there is no way that these massive stones of this size, that, by the way, if you've ever seen an anchor stone, it's a big stone. It's kind of curved at the top and it's got a hole through it where you can tie a rope through it. Every one of those have that. There's other scientists that say that there's no way that these could have just appeared naturally through the process of time. That they are definitive proof of an anchor stone. But let's fast forward a little bit further into the future, and we can go all the way to recent LIDAR. Now, LIDAR, for those that do not know, is a ground penetrating radar. What it does is it searches the ground beneath our feet to see if there's anything buried. And through modern LIDAR, as recent as 2025, it has shown that there are linear and right angle subterranean structures, such as walls, up underneath the site. Also, in 2025, by a joint American and European expedition, soil samples in it have indicated organic carbon and potassium inside the structure. What does that mean? That means that things that are not natural of that region are there, and there's decomposition happening. Pieces or fragments of wood have been radiocarbon dated, and they go back at least around 5,500 years. Now, I know there's a lot of people that find flaws in radiocarbon dating, and that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother time. But what science has found, this structure is around 538 feet, which matches with Genesis 6. We have anchor stones. We have the organic carbon and potassium. We also know that the Turkish government has strictly regulated this site. You have to go through an act of Congress to be able to have permission to go out there. We also know that because of soil samples, organic matter of clay and iron consistent with decay of ancient wood is there. It's kind of a 50-50. Some people say it's just common geological structure going back. Other people are saying that, this stuff could not just naturally appear there, that that is definitive proof. Also, soil around the site has presence of marine fossils and rock layers. That is viewed as definitive evidence of an ocean once covering the land. So, science has kind of taken the long way around proving. Now, it was by complete accident that this site was discovered. That's what we say. Now, as we read in Genesis 6, the Bible tells us exactly where it's at. But you also have to remember Mount Ararat is a huge area. I mean, it is a massive area. So to say it's in Mount Ararat would kind of be the same as saying I left $1,000 in New York. I mean, it is a huge structure. But because of the advent of modern technology, of radar, of sonar, of LiDAR, we have actually, through space, and for those of you that have Google Earth, you can look this up and it'll show you this. Now, another thing, and I should have studied a little bit better on it, but a couple of years ago, there was actually a group of Chinese missionaries that snuck into this site and they went underground. This video is available on YouTube, by the way. For those of you that have not seen it, this is a massive structure. I mean, these guys are walking around. They're seeing what looks like stables. They're seeing what looks like walls, like corridors. Obviously, once they were discovered, they were kicked out. Now, I know some people saying, well, it could have been AI. This was before the advent of AI. You can tell that that video was taken from a cell phone. It's not the best footage, but obviously it's not the worst footage. You can tell it's not been doctored. It's not cut in. It's not cut out. But for those of you that are interested, get onto YouTube, look that up. I know, Eric, you've actually studied that a little bit more than I have. What insights have you gained, particularly with that video? Because I know you and I were talking about it a little bit earlier today.
It is incredible. They actually got into the ship itself, and you can clearly see it's either a bow or a stern. You can see walk through corridors. You could also see like what would have been stables. Now a lot of that wood has been collapsed over the years, but it is very. I mean, to me, it was very obvious it was inside a ship. It was definitely inside a ship. This wasn't a long buried home or a cave. I mean, it was clear what they were inside of, in my
And
opinion.
Eric, I want to go back to something that you pointed out earlier because somebody is sitting there laughing, saying, angels and humans. Have you ever seen the movie The Isle of Dr. Monroe?
I never saw I didn't see the modern one. I saw the older one
All right.
years and years and years and years ago.
So pretty much what it is this doctor who's gone completely mad and he starts mixing all this DNA. We know for a fact that the US government's been doing this for years. So to say it's not plausible, that should be dismissed on the spot. We know that the conjuring of DNA is not just something that was a US thing. It's a Chinese thing. It was a Nazi thing. It's been going on as long as man has been going on. How do we mix? You look at ancient Sparta. If we breed this with this, do we come up with it? How can we make a more efficient, a stronger, a better human? So it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's this is not the thing of imagination. This is kind of the thing of nightmares. And the reason it's the thing of nightmares is because as we're going through this over the course of the next couple of weeks, we're not going to see it's just some type of fantasy that was thrown at the wall. This is plausible. This is stuff that has been done by our government and other governments. Um, I think back a couple of years ago when the British government cloned a goat by taking an egg out of a goat, fertilizing it, putting it back in her, then she gave birth to herself. I believe the goat's name was Lucy, but it was a big deal up in Scotland. It was around 2016. Um, so we know that DNA and manipulation and all this, we know it's possible. Even through modern times where we look at being able to take the blood out of an umbilical cord to freeze it and one day have cures for certain diseases. So genetic manipulation is not out of the realm of possibility. It's just something that a lot of us really don't like to think about because honestly, as we're going into the next couple of weeks, it is a little bit scary. But
Well, and I would even say this. Uh, Years ago, I was in a grocery store, and they had these hybrid fruits, an apple pear, and
mhm.
it was a pear and an apple that had been genetically modified, obviously, and they had some other ones. So no, I mean, genetic sciences have came a long way, and with the advancement of technology, I mean, they're doing all sorts of they're doing all sorts of things. Obviously, they're doing it in agriculture. So,
Well, and somebody's sitting on here saying, well, they weren't that smart back then. Well, modern science is still baffled at how the pyramids were built. If they can't figure that out, um, we have to understand our forefathers, those that came before us, they were every bit as smart as we were. Um, you and I have talked about it ad nauseum. There's nothing new under the sun. It's just a different idea or coming up with a different way to achieve a goal that's already been written or thought about.
well, I mean, even going along those lines, I mean, there were no computers, there were no advanced uh, telescopes during Galileo's time, and yet look at look at the theories and look at the things that Galileo came up with. Sir Isaac Newton. Sir Isaac Newton developed a science of gravity. And of course, the technology we have now, there wasn't even fragments of it back then.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they were the scientists back then. While they're not as advanced and didn't have the discoveries we have now, and they were still very smart, and they still laid down some very important and foundational work for science that we
Right.
use today.
And that's one thing that I want to encourage. The few things that I brought up tonight, I'm trying to lay out very simple things that anybody that's curious you can look up on your phone. Um, yes, we're going to be Bible centered, but whenever we start to talk about history and archaeology, we want it to be something that you can see for yourself and look up, and that way you can determine for yourself. I mean, yes, everything has to be Bible centric, but if we're going to throw something out there, it needs to be something accessible for all. Now,
And it will always bring you back to the Word of God.
exactly.
And I would like to add this too. Going back to what I said before, there's never been a sinless person. However, take a look just for a quick moment at 2 Corinthians. Second Corinthians in chapter 5. And I just want to read verse 21 really quick. For he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God in him. And the him is referring to the Messiah Yeshua, Jesus. There was one. Now he was human and then some, but he was the only one in the history of the world that absolutely was completely sinless. And because he was completely sinless, he died for our sins. Jesus the Messiah. And very, very important to understand that. He was the sinless one who died for the sins of all of us. And I wanted to add that in there.
Well, and I'm going to circle back around to where we was at. I'm going to read some out of Genesis 6:13 through 22, and just kind of, not a long explanation, but maybe a short synopsis. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Verse 14, make thee an ark of gopher wood, rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shall pitch it within and without with pitch. So I don't want to hit on it too hard. Um, Everything that I've studied, the term gopher wood is either believed to be an extinct species of tree, or it is believed to have been kind of one of those mistranslations, meaning cypress. What gets the Bible scholars on this? This is actually the only time in the Bible where this specific is mentioned, so it's hard to use it to kind of circle back around and get a pinpoint on the interpretation. But most theologians believe either an extinct form of tree or a reference to something like a cypress tree. Going down to 16. A window shalt thou make into the ark, and in cubit thou shalt finish it above, and the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side, therefore with lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. And behold, I do bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in earth shall die. But with thee I will establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, and thy sons, and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee. And of every living thing of all the flesh, two of every sort, shalt thou bring into the ark to keep them alive with thee. There shall be male and female. I want to say something. You love everybody as a Christian. Sometimes you dislike their ways. Um, if I take a socket, I've got to have a male and a female end to produce a spark. I can't have two female ends. I can't have two male ends. I don't want to hit too hard on that, but that's a debate for a different time. It's just we take the Bible as it comes to us, as a literal interpretation. And that's one thing that we need to remember as we're going through this. Verse 20, of fowls after their kind, and of cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after is kind. Two of every sort shall come unto thee to keep them alive, and take thou unto thee all the food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them. Thus did Noah according to all that God commanded him, so did he. I want everybody to think about something. Noah didn't just have to build an ark. Noah didn't just have to put the two and two together. He had to plan on feeding them. So, what went into that? This was a lot bigger undertaking than I think most people realize. We think built the
Absolutely.
boat, God sent them, they locked themselves in the state. No, you got to have food and water for 40 days. I mean, I don't know of any creature that can go, 40 days and 40 nights without food and water. So this was a lengthy process. You had to have food, you had to have water. Think about the hygiene too. I mean, you just couldn't go around hanging out in waste either. So there's a lot more as you really start digging into what all Noah had to do and the planning and the preparation. So when somebody reads it and say, man, this took him a long time to build, you got to think about all the stuff that we're not thinking about that goes into it, the food, the hygiene, the making sure that these animals are going to be taken care of. And there's so much more that we don't think about when we hear that story. We just think of that story.
Absolutely. And you can also see, you can also clearly see God's grace and his provision in this. His provision in it. All the animals survived. His whole family survived. So, I mean, besides the preparation, the storing up of grains, the storing up of foods, and stuff like that. You also have to see God's power in it, because two of every species would have also included predators, predatory animals, carnivores. And yet, nothing was killed. Everything survived according to the account. And then every species did repopulate again.
And Eric, I
So,
want to circle back around to when we was talking about it. So in Genesis 8:4 is where it talks about the ark landed in the mountains of Ararat. So just for clarification on that. Also, just for clarification, the village of Eight, now forgive me, here's where I can be weak. The village of Arzap. Um, you're a little bit better with some of the Hebrew names than I am, but the significance in it is there is a natural spring which Noah and his family would have needed for their survival. But what is now referred to as the village of Eight, near the site, there's a natural spring that comes up from the ground. So it's obvious location that would have provided them with resources that they needed to survive.
oh, absolutely. And if you look at the area, it is absolutely farmable. It's sustainable, and yes, there is a spring. As a matter of fact, in the Drupanar site, in the village of Eight, there's a well, an ancient well, if I'm not mistaken, that was created where that pocket of water has been.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so again, the ship didn't just by chance park itself on the foothills leading up to Mount Ararat itself. It was strategically placed there by God.
Well, and another thing that people need to remember too, and this is what a lot of historians and archaeologists have to look at. So we're used to instant gratification, being able to look up something right then and there. In all likelihood, they're not going to come up on a house that says "Welcome to Noah's house."
Yeah.
I mean, but there are certain telltale signs. They have such things as pottery that dates back to what would have been that area. So I mean, there's nothing definitive that there wasn't a note from Noah said, "Hey, if this is 2026, here's where I live." But they have found, like I said, remnants of ancient pottery and things that date back to that time that you could use to point to that, hey, we don't know 100% that this was Noah's house, but we know that this area was inhabited by a small group of people around the time where this happened.
Yeah. Well, there's ruins of it,
Right.
of floors and other things that they have found. Um, it's also believed that they found the tomb or the remnants of the tomb of Noah's wife in the Drupanar site. It is an absolutely incredible place. The Drogue stones, the anchor stones, I and you pointed this out. They're unmistakable what they are. They're not natural, and not only people from our generation, going back a century, a couple centuries, but even further back during the Crusade periods, they found a handful of those Drogue stones with Crusader symbols on it. So it's not just us and a few other believers that believe that place was the place, in fact, where the Bible said that the ark settled down at and where the family had lived. Um, Going back through centuries, there are several people that believed also that was, in fact, the site. And I haven't, I mean, just me personally, and based on scripture, I haven't seen anywhere else in the world that would have been a candidate for it.
Right. And even based off of Genesis and its description, everything that we have from satellite images as well as the ground penetrating radar and all this other pretty much narrows it down. I mean, nothing else is coming in line with what would be a candidate for this.
Well, I would just say this off the cuff. It would be pretty hard to locate a ship almost the size of a modern aircraft carrier up in the foothills of Ararat. I mean, that's me.
And for those that are curious, if you do look this up, the satellite imagery, it's unmistakable. I mean, it
It is.
sticks out like a sore thumb.
I agree. I absolutely agree. Um, and with that, a quick reminder to everyone. Uh, Next week, the next video we'll do, we are going to cover giants. We are absolutely going to cover the Nephilim that are described. And we are going to see what it has to do with the end times as well. And we would like to tell everyone, please, if you enjoyed this, please like, please share, and subscribe, and help get this out to others, as we are doing this also because we believe we are in the last days. The gospel must get out, and the truth about the end times also needs to get out so that people should know. Um, and that is all I have, Brother George.
No, I just want to point out we're about to go into some stuff that it's going to make you scratch your head. But
Yeah, absolutely.
there is so much historical and archaeological evidence that you just kind of shake your head. Um, it's going to be exciting for me just because there's so many tangible things that go along with the Bible, with what we're about to be getting into.
With that, if there's anything else, we will close out. Um, from myself and Pastor George, we want to say God bless all of you in Jesus' name, and we will see you again next week.